Today I'm going to make pie crust. This is dedicated to my daughter Myra. She wants a lesson in making pie crust, and I can't be here all winter to give that to her, and haven't gotten around to it. I'm going to Arizona pretty soon, so I thought I would make this video. And this is pie crust that I don't know. It's kind of a recipe that my mother gave me, and then I kind of altered it some. It's got 1 teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of soda, 3½ cups of all-purpose flour, 3 sticks of butter. You know I only cook with butter. 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of vinegar, and let me emphasize that's apple cider vinegar. You don't want to use the white purified or whatever it's called. You want to use the natural. And since I have the vinegar, I use the soda. And about 1½ cups of cold water. So I've got everything set up here. I've had the butter sitting out. My kitchen's kind of cold today, so the butter didn't get real soft. And I've got a variety of pans. I like to use the deep dish pans. And so I'm going to get started with this. So what I have here is my 3 sticks of butter, to which I'm going to add my 3½ cups of flour. Okay? And then a teaspoon of salt. And actually that was the baking soda that I just put in there. Let me tell you a little bit about the baking soda. The recipe my mother gave me, and most recipes don't call for anything like that, but when I was in France staying with a couple about my age in Tours, which is real close to, it's Saint Cyr. Actually I was in Saint Cyr, across the Loire, with BGSU. And I was at a family stay, and the couple I stayed with, the family I stayed with, was my age and had kids Chad's age. And so anyhow, she was making a turnover for her husband one day, and she was telling me how she was doing it. And she was putting the ingredients together, and she said, un petit peu de levure. And I'm like, well, what kind of levure do you use? And she says, what do you mean, what kind of levure? That's leavening. And I said, well, in the States, we've got baking soda and baking powder. She said, no, no, no. In France, we only have 1 levure. So I don't know exactly what that's composed of. But ever since then, I've started to use a bit of levure in my dough with pie. And you know, one reason is because it's got butter in it. And butter tends to make it a little harder than it would be with Crisco or, let's say, lard. Okay, so what I have to do to this is I have to blend it. I'm going to blend it now with my pastry blender here. I have used my my Cuisinart for this over the years, but I don't know. I think it's so much easier if I can just deal with the whole thing with my hands and get the feel of it, because I think it's sometimes got processed too much in the Cuisinart. So I'm going to work with this now by hand. Okay, at some point in there I said something about 1.5 cups of cold water. That's just wrong. It's about 1/3 cup or 1/2 cup of cold water is what we use. And I didn't get my salt in, so I'm going to get my salt in before I work this. I've been working this for just a few minutes here, and I think it's good. You know, it's got the little beads of butter and flour mixed together. So what I'm going to do now is I've got my water, my 1/2 cup, a little bit less than 1/2 cup of water. And here's the vinegar. We're going to 1/2 cup of water, and we're going to stick the vinegar in there. And here again, it is the apple cider vinegar and the egg, 1 egg. I generally buy large eggs. And we're going to mix that together. All right, das ist gut, ja. Okay, take this out and pour the water, egg, and vinegar mixture in here. And then I will work with it with my hands, yes, but also with my favorite spatula, and get it all worked together. And then if it doesn't feel like it's got enough water or whatever, I can add it then too, because I will be feeling it with my hands as opposed to having it in a bread maker or a processor, food processor. So I'll be working with this for a few minutes here. Okay, so I have worked this with my spatula for a few minutes, and now I'm going to start digging in there with my hands and putting it together. That's a far better judge of how moist it is, because I can feel it. So I will be working this into a ball with my hands. Alright, so here I am now, and I've got this pretty well done up with my hands. I really don't put it into one big ball. I kind of just work with one section of it at a time to get it to the way I like to have it. I've got my all-purpose flour sprinkled out on the cupboard here. This really isn't wood. This is just the way I did my cupboard some 35 years ago. It's just for mica. Okay, so there's, I think this will be big enough. And I'm going to have to get flour on both sides of it. Here again, you don't want to, if you watched any of my other videos with the dough for various pastries and things, you know, you got to keep there some flour on the bottom or you're going to have stickiness. So I'm going to also flour my rolling pin. Now some rolling pins, like the one my mother had over there, are stationary. They don't roll. And some rolling pins don't even have handles. You just kind of move the top. Well, I bought this one, you know, 30, no, wait a minute. I bought this one some probably 45 years ago, if not even longer than that. So mine does this, and I like that, but it does create one problem, and I'll show you that after a bit. So, I don't know what they have on the market, honest to God, I tell you, I don't know. I haven't looked. What's the point of looking? I don't need anything. Okay, so I'm going to roll this out so it fits my pan. I want to also say that I've been making pies for a long, long time because probably when I was a sophomore, between my sophomore and junior year, I had to have a summer project for FHA. And I chose pie making, and I'm ever so glad I did. I think I gained a little bit of weight that year. I remember Mom thinking, oh my goodness, she's getting a little pudgy here. Okay, so then I set that on top, and I'm like, okay, is it going to be enough to go up the sides and everything? This is a relatively thick crust right now. And I like thick crust, and I like deep pans. Thick crust, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, I suppose. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this over to the side, and I have struggled over the years of how to get this in the pie pan without breaking it. And then one time I was probably watching something on the Food Channel or something, and this is what they did, and I thought, how ingenious is that? And so you roll it on your rolling pin like that, and now mine, this is the problem I have, is I have to put my thumbs on the pin so it doesn't roll. So if you have one that doesn't have the rolling thing, you wouldn't have that problem. And then just kind of lay it over your pie crust, judge your endings, and put it on there. Ever so easy. Okay, it's wonderful. So there we have it in there. So what am I going to do with this? Well, I'm taking off for Arizona in a couple days, and I'll be gone about 3-4 months. And these pies are going to sit in, these crusts are going to sit in the freezer. But what I'm going to do, I'm doing this, I wouldn't make pie crust right now, but I want to show Myra how to do this. And so when I get back, you know what time of year it's going to be. It's going to be time for rhubarb. And I love to make rhubarb custard using my mother-in-law Marilyn's recipe for that. And then of course right after that, or during that, you have strawberries. And so a deep dish strawberry pie is also good. But definitely I want a deep dish for my rhubarb. So when we have a piece of that rhubarb custard, you got a piece of pie. You know, it's deep, it's thick, it's good. So what I do is I take these two fingers. Now I know my hands are shaped different than other people's because I have rheumatoid, but anyhow, you take these two fingers and your index on the other hand, if you're right-handed like I am, and you just push the crust in. Okay, you push those, put the two here, your index and your thumb, and then just like that. So I'm going to go around with that, and then I'm going to take the rest of the pie crust and put them in another deep dish. And I'm not sure, I've got various sizes here depending on what I decide to do. I've got a very small pie crust pie pan here.
8-inch.
And then I've got a larger, which would be what, more of a 9-inch than you're saying, Rodney? And
yes,
this is an 8-inch. So if I only have a little bit of crust left, then I'll use this one, and we'll have some sort of little pudding pie or something. But what I'm thinking today is, my husband and I have been on a apple buying kick. But the thing is, I haven't been doing anything with the apples. We got so much other stuff to eat. So what I'm going to do with my last piece of crust is make a turnover, just like Josie was when I was in France. That's what she was making for her husband. I want to say one other thing. Look at me this time. I want to say one other thing about pie making. I used to use shortening. And my husband says, no, 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 I don't want you to use shortening or margarine anymore. It's not healthy for us, so use butter. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do I remember butter crust. When my girlfriend Annette and I went to France back in the 80s, I thought, oh, I want to eat one of those marvelous little tarts that the French make. And so I bought this, and we're sitting outside at this cafe. And this beautiful fruit tart, the crust looks absolutely delicious. And so I take my fork and I push down on the crust thinking it's going to be so flaky and wonderful. But instead of being flaky, it was hard, and I mean hard. And that pie flew across and hit my girlfriend. I'm like, oh my gosh, is that bad? And so when he said to use butter, I'm like, well, I know what happens with the butter. It gets hard. So then I remember, you know, why don't I put the levure or the shortening in it? And that makes it so it's far more flaky. It is flaky.